So we're going to talk about dog breeds. Breeds are often classified into different groups, and the groups are the different types of dogs there are, or the purposes for which they were bred. There's a lot of different purposes that dogs were bred. Some were for hunting, some were for companion, but I'm going to list each breed group and then give you an example of some of the most commonly seen breeds within each group and their similarities. So if we start with the sporting group, which in Australia is called the gun dog group, this is a group of dogs that was originally designed to help men when they go hunting. Whether it was for retrieving the game, so the animal that's been shot by the farmer or shot by the hunter, and the dog is required to go out into the field, find the maimed animal and bring it back to the hunter, and as unharmed as possible, particularly if the duck or pheasant was intended to go on the dinner table. So there's a lot of characteristics about these hunting dogs or gun dogs that is unique to those breeds. They have what's called a soft mouth, which means they should never bite with a potential of doing harm. They're not supposed to injure their bird in any way. So when they pick up the object and bring it back to you, they're very gentle about it. They're also very alert and active and do require lots and lots of exercise. So a gun dog, its features of its coat or its fur is often to help it do its job. They vary in size from small to large, but they often have the same features. Webbed feet to make them good swimmers, a sleek, smooth, shiny top coat with some feathering to aid them in their movement through the different types of brush or grass or water that they have to go through to pick up the object and bring it back to the gunman. So one of the things that you need to remember when you're dealing with a gun dog is those character traits that make them very easy to train. They're very smart, but they're very loyal to their owner. Now, the hound group is one of the most ancient breeds of dogs. If you look back to Egyptian times, dogs like the Pharaoh hound were back on the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb. These dogs are bred to hunt as well. So most older breeds are for the purposes of assisting man in hunting. And with the hounds, there's two types. There's a sight hound and there's a scent hound. Now, how you tell the two apart is usually simple. A sight hound are a tall, long-legged dog with very small laid-back ears and a very long snout, and they are bred to run. So think of a greyhound. Very muscular, very athletic. They can cover a lot of ground very quickly, similar to a cheetah or big hunting cat. The scent hound, on the contrast, is usually a very short-statured dog, very short-legged, everything close to the ground, often a lot of wrinkles and folds around a very big nose, and often in breeds, for example, the bloodhound, their ears are used as a funnel. When the nose is to the ground, those big floppy ears actually help the dog funnel the scent that it's traveling onto up into the nose to help direct it on its path. So both hounds were used for hunting and tracking game, but not necessarily catching and killing them. Most of the time they have a very distinctive bark or howl that hounds are very well known for. So the idea was that when they caught up with the game, they would make a lot of noise so that all of the people hunting knew how to find the location of the game. Terriers are another group of dogs that have very similar characteristics. The breeds within that group all have a harsh, wiry, tough coat. Another distinctive feature of terriers is they have very, very large teeth for the size of the dog, particularly their incisors. But that's because of what they were bred to do. They are very good at digging holes, and they are very good at killing rats. And the difference too in how those dogs behave, they become very alert when they have something like a squeaky toy. In fact, if you put a squeaky toy or any type of fluffy toy, they will shake it until it squeaks no more. So that's what makes the terriers quite unique, in that when they get their hunt or their kill, their way of disposing of their victim is to shake it quite viciously until it's dead. Other breeds of dogs don't do that. They tend to grab things and hold things and just basically clamp them or suffocate them. Terriers have, I guess, a tenacious spirit as well, so it makes them quite strong-willed. They're not so interested in what job it is you want them to do. It's more an instinct of what they have to do. So they're not doing it to please the owner per se. They're doing it because that's what they're bred to do, and they just love it. So terriers are very unique in their purpose, and you need to be able to identify that they are a strong-willed dog. So the toy group, which are mostly bred just to be companions to people, that is. So a toy dog is usually a very small dog. They vary in colours, shapes, and coat types, but they all should have the same disposition. A companion dog is essentially a lap dog. So it should want nothing more than to sleep at its master's feet or in their lap, be stroked and patted and kissed and cuddled. They should be easy to look after. They don't have big nasty teeth. In often cases they have very small teeny white teeth. And the size or the shape or the coat type is entirely the personal choice of the people that buy these pets as companion animals. So they should be very sweet-natured, they should be very loving, they should be very soft. Obviously in the real world that doesn't always happen, and not all of them come out with the right temperament. But we're talking about what is ideal and what the toy group contains. So there's dogs like the Chihuahua, the Cavalier King Charles, the Bichon Frise, and those little guys are a companion dog only, not bred for anything else other than for love and affection. So working dogs, which in Australia are called utility dogs, are the types of dogs that are usually bred as a guard dog, or a dog that's meant to pull weight or rescue people. So in all of the working dogs or utility dogs, you'll find the German Shepherds, the Boxer, the Newfoundland, the Saint Bernard. So they're often very big, very strong, very powerful dogs. They can travel a long distance and they can pull heavy loads. They're very much a singular person's dog, so they don't do that well in groups. They prefer to be one-on-one with their master or their owner, and they're very loyal. But because of that loyal, strong person-to-person bond that they can have a very strong guarding instinct. Therefore, that's why they make good police dogs and other military dogs. They're very fierce. So when they have a job that they need to get done, they're very focused on getting that job done and nothing will get in their way. So very determined. Working dogs have a big variety of coat types. Most of them, however, are double coats, both long and short varieties. And that's because almost all of the dogs in this group are out in the elements. They're out in quite harsh climates, so they need very thick, heavy fur to protect them from the elements. The herding group contains dogs that were meant for herding livestock. So whether it be sheep, cattle, goats, or any other type of livestock, these guys were bred usually just to keep a flock intact or to find the odd stray animal and bring it back to the herd. The working dog group, the herding dog group, can run and run and run. They have a lot of stamina. They have to keep going for long periods of time, sometimes all day. So they become a very, very fit dog. They're usually a medium-sized dog, so they need to blend in with the livestock. They need to be able to jump over the livestock, go under the livestock. So you'll find that the majority of the herding dogs are a medium to large dog, and they need to be able to move quite quickly, and they know how to stoop really, really low to the ground. They can almost shadow another animal, and they have to be quick to get out in front or predict the sheep or the goat or the cow's movements. Very, very intelligent, very quick on their feet, and they do require a lot of exercise. Their coats vary, but are mostly a very weatherproof coat, whether it be a border collie or an old English sheepdog. There's a lot of fur to keep those guys safe and protected whilst they're out in the woods or the fields doing their job. The non-sporting group is a group of dogs that really should belong in other groups somewhere, depending upon what they were originally bred to do. But for one reason or another, they have evolved into a dog that doesn't really fit there anymore. One example would be the standard poodle. The standard poodle was once a hunting dog or a gun dog, but it's now not really used in that field very much anymore. So it's been put into what's called the non-sporting group. Another breed of dog that you'll find here is the Lhasa Apso. Now the Lhasa Apso was bred to be a part of a palace as a little guard dog, also as a companion. So a bit of two different jobs, but it doesn't really fit in the companion group anymore, and it's put into the non-sporting group. Non-sporting isn't really non-sporting. It means they used to be at one point in time, but they no longer are. But the breeds in that group are quite varied. We've got the British Bulldog, the Chow Chow, the French Bulldog, and also the Dalmatian. So if you look into the heritage of each of those breeds, at one point in time, they each had a unique purpose, but over very many years, they've simply lost their purpose and don't get used for that very much anymore. In summary, with the Australian Kennel Council breed groups, we mostly focus on the dog's purpose and what it was intended for. You can do a little bit more research online to look at individual breeds, but it's ideal that you identify what type of dog it is by the group that it comes from.
Understanding basic topographical anatomy is one of the key areas where you need to be confident in not only pet grooming, but also any animal handling. there's going to be certain pressure points that you can use to help you restrain the animal, whether that be in an emergency situation or for a grooming or maintenance procedure. I'm just going to go through the key areas here on Sierra that you need to know. The first being the stop, which is the indent between the muzzle and the beginning of the brain case. So this little indent here between the eyes is called the stop. On the back of the skull is your occiput. On certain breeds of dogs, this is going to be more pronounced than others. Going down into our sternum. So our sternum is basically our breastbone. Then we have our point of shoulder. Now between our point of shoulder, our withers and our elbow makes up our front assembly. So our withers are located up here between our two shoulder blades. This bone then comes down to meet up with this bone here that then makes up your front assembly down to your elbow. Where these two bones meet is called your point of shoulder. Then we're coming down to our elbow, and down the bottom here is called our stopper pad. So when you're dealing with dogs that like dog sports, this may be a key area where the owners will try and protect when they're chasing game. Down the bottom here is our front pastern. They also have their rear pastern, which is between the hock and the floor. As I said before, our withers located between our two shoulder blades. This is where we measure the height of the dog from withers to floor. Our length is then measured from point of shoulder to point of rump. You will have certain breeds of dogs that are either squarely built or rectangular in shape. Our back is then made up of 3 sections. First being our back, our loin makes up the second section, and our final section is our croup, which makes up our rear assembly. From hip bone to point of rump to stifle makes up your rear assembly. It's important to know that these bones are held together by a ball and socket, so the dog will have limited outward motion here. Whereas our front assembly, however, is only held together by muscles and tendons. So it's important to remember that this forearm can only reach forward or slightly back. In particular, when you're asking dogs to be groomed, it's important to remember these things. Coming through, this is our flank, this bit of skin here. So this is quite a sensitive area when you're dealing with grooming dogs. You know, this skin is quite saggy, so it's important to remember that this is one of those high caution areas when grooming dogs. Coming down to back to our point of rump, which makes up our rear assembly. From croup, point of rump to stifle. Our kneecap is our stifle bone. At the back here, we have a thigh muscle made up of 2 sections. The first being our upper thigh, the second being the lower thigh. Sierra's quite good at showing this because you can visibly see how that muscle turns out, comes in at this point here, that's the end of the upper thigh, and then back out into our lower thigh. With our stifle, you will have certain breeds of dogs that are prone to knee issues. So it's always important to remember that when you're asking the dog to lift this leg to support the stifle at that time, you don't want to create a lot of pressure on this knee because certain breeds of dogs will be prone to things like slipping patellas or, in layman's term, slipping kneecaps. Like I said before, this is our rear pastern And also this little, what we call our Achilles heel, is called a hock in the dog. Your point of rump can also be referred to as your ischium bone. I'm going to show you a couple of holds or using pressure points where we can ask the dog to safely lift their limbs for us, in particular when we're dealing with dogs that we are trying to groom or inspect their feet or trim their toenails, any of those maintenance things that we may need to ask the dog to give us their leg. So just behind the elbow here is a pressure point. So you can turn the dog's forearm from floppy at the bottom part of the dog. By pinching that pressure point behind the elbow, you can then straighten the dog's leg. This is very useful in pet grooming, to be able to run your clippers down a flat surface. The other hold that you can utilize is this pressure point here, supporting our stifle. Good girl. To lock your rear leg in place, again, just straightening that leg up. Good girl. So that's a basic overview of the dog's basic anatomy and some of the holds that you can use.